right? Not something that's inherent in reality, but something that is made to be perceived as though it were inherent in reality, which has been falsely attributed to the real, to natural. This is what he's talking about, restoration. He's trying to restore reality from this. So, what ends up happening? The moral experience of moral phenomenon, right? The experience now is, you can think of the perceiver as being in a cage. You can think of the perceiver as being in a cage, right? The perceiver experiences moral phenomena as real. The perceiver experiences moral phenomena as real. You can imagine if at birth, this is, philosophers can get away with the quirkiest examples because that's how we operate. And for people who aren't comfortable or familiar with philosophers, they hate our hypothetical examples. And you can make a really big name for yourself off of some pretty abstract, brain in the vat, all types of, there's some hokey examples out there for people who don't know philosophy, but it's actually genius within the philosophical community. We understand. I can't go into sort of the function of hypothetical examples, but here's one. Out there example, but it'll make the point. Imagine that you're a child. Everyone else in the world sees the world sort of regularly, like you're looking at the world right now. But there's a child, and it's a big secret. It's sort of like the Truman Show, right? There's a big secret. And what people do is they've invented a contact that you can put onto the eyes of the child at birth, or even prenatally. Let's just go real sci-fi. Prenatally, mom could pop a pill, which will artificially color the hue of the world as blue, so that the world to this child, from even before the child is born, the child develops the ability to perceive the world as blue. However, the parent at any time can decide that they no longer want the child to perceive the world as blue, and they click a button, and now the child perceives the world like we all perceive the world. So the child wakes up, becomes cognizant, functions in the world, acts like we act, talks like we talk, loves like we love, cries like we cry, functions for all practical purposes, not knowing the inside joke, that they don't see the world that we see the world. And you can see how evil this would be, right, for the parents to do that. So the child's just, the child doesn't even know, provided no one tells the child this. The child grows into a grown adult, man or woman, and the child, now an adult, is functioning regular in the world, but not recognizing that everything, and I actually have a blue glass over there, it would be perfect to demonstrate this, but you get the idea. You perceive the world through these sort of embedded contacts, and everything you see is blue. You don't know of a difference because you perceive, your perception has been forced, your perception of reality has been created, and not only has it been created, but it's impossible to differentiate the real interpretation of reality from your interpretation of reality because functionally, it is the same. Because functionally, it is the same. Then one day, mom and dad push the button, and the kid's walking, or the adult's walking, wow, it's no longer blue. You're like, hold on, wait a second. What the hell? What is that? Like, you look at red and you're like, what is that? Everything's been blue before, right? What is that? Green. What is that? What is it? What is, and now your brain is just raging. You're like, this is a fundamental shift. Because you recognize something's wrong. And if you find out it's the case that your parents did it to you, now that recognition turns to rage and anger. Right? Because you recognize how much you've missed out, despite the fact you've been functioning under the perception that it's all been blue. You now realize that it's a lie, and now, mom and dad are probably in jeopardy. Right? What ends up happening is the perceiver thinks, right? The perceiver thinks that reality is, right? They perceive moral phenomena as real. It really, in and of itself, it really, just the act, I'm going to go to a baseline act that everybody understands, just the act of me going to the courthouse, or me going to the synagogue, or the church, or wherever you go to get married, I go there, do you take her to be your wife, do you take him to be your husband, I do, we're married, okay, great. And you can even do it in a religious sense. and we have sexual intercourse, okay, great, and then one of us have sexual intercourse with someone other than our spouse, that act in and of itself is already, a priori, prior to the act being committed, before even the act is committed. This is like a bachelor is an unmarried man is a bachelor. Tautologically speaking, to be technical, that act in and of itself, a spouse having sexual intercourse with someone who is not that person's spouse, as defined by that, is immoral. If you believe that, think about how your world is colored. What if it's the case that that's not true? Now, I don't want to get I'm not trying to really mess your brain up, right? Because I understand how profound it is that I'm saying, and this might be rocking your socks if I'm doing my job right. Philosophy is supposed to shake you up, right? What if that's not true? What if that's not true? Just what if? I'm not trying to challenge your religious beliefs. I'm not trying to disrespect your cultural practices. It's not about that. I'm just asking a question. What if it's the case that it's not true? If it could be the case that you would derive more happiness in the world being monogamous, more power to you. If it's the case for you specifically, whoever you might be, that you think that you would be more happy performing sexual acts with people other than your spouse, then why aren't you doing that? Because of a system of morality that's telling you that inherently, in and of itself, independent to your existence, that act, a priori, is immoral? What if it's not? What if it's not? Because if it's not, that means someone, just like mom and dad, in that horrible example, someone is controlling the way you perceive reality. And thus, insofar as you accord with their perception, you are controlled by them. It's not just that you control by them, they shape your reality. Right? Your reality is conditioned by your understanding of experience. It's not just the case that my world is all blue. I don't know anything else until I recognize, click, holy crap, what is all of this? What is all the, I saw all of this before. This was here. I could function. You would never know, right? Similarly, moral actions that are allegedly phenomena, right? That are allegedly moral phenomena, you function in the world as though they were value attributed, which is what's real. You can't there is no functional difference in a person who perceives reality. In a general, there is functional difference to an extent, but generally speaking, there is no functional difference between a person who perceives reality as moral phenomena and a person who doesn't, other than the fact, and this is the important point, and this is the point of the last section, 9.6, that the person who disavows this is more free, can really exercise freedom, right? So I'm in a committed, this is not me, I'm just saying hypothetically, I'm in a committed relationship, I'm married, and I choose to have sex outside of my marriage. I'm in a committed relationship, I'm heterosexual, I choose to have homosexual sex. In a heterosexual relationship, there's all types of variations, right? And people, oh, this is perversion, this is an introduction of this is all that. Sure, right? But I'm not a theologian, I'm not doing a religious course, right? This is a course on, I want you to be able to see how, in very explicit terms, if it's the case that it's not true, that an act like extramarital sex is in and of itself an affair, bad, cheating, all the labels that they gave them, all those words are already value loaded, right? If it's the case that it isn't inherently in and of itself immoral, then the fact that you decide to remain monogamous because your institution tells you that monogamy is the best policy isn't an exercise of freedom at all. And that's what Nietzsche was saying in the last section, right? So what ends up happening is, insofar as you ascribe to this belief that it is real, your actions conform to perception, what you think is your perception of reality. Your action, right? Your action conform